Welcome to Real Talk for Women of Faith, brought to you by Inner City Women of Faith. We are your hosts. I'm Rosette McGarry Hawkins and
Nicole Rivas.
hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our show today. We are still in our Black Love series. Today, our topic is I'm not your superwoman. I'm exhausted. So, as it relates to Black love, all the people we love, right? Our spouses, our boyfriends, our kids, our mamas, our everybody else that we are like living to love. We get exhausted, we get tired, we get overwhelmed, and we neglect self-care. So to help us get on track with that today, we have Sheridan Richards back with us again. Hey, Sheridan.
Hi, ladies. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being with us today. Yeah. Now, Sheridan, tell me, because I thought, or we thought that you were a person, a good person um, to have share with us on this topic because you have a husband who's probably really busy because he's a pastor, right? And you have two kids, and you work, and you just ran for city council. So that's busy, right? You have a life basically. You and your husband, you're not just
Yes.
kind of sitting at home raising kids and and nothing's wrong with that. That's beautiful. I would love to do that. But many of us don't have the privilege of doing, and it's not just, we're not able to just sit home and be cute little mommy. Many of us have a lot of responsibilities that go along with our motherhood, that go along with our being a wife, etc. We have responsibilities. We have callings, right? Things that God has called us to do. And so we get exhausted and we get overwhelmed. So let's talk about that, Sheridan.
But hold on. We get clear first.
Yes.
I want to be crystal clear. I don't know any cute little mommies. Even mommies who are at home.
I do have cute little mommy.
Are exhausted. So
I was just thinking that because I was
Let's
home
get
almost
this
3 years with
point
my oldest.
from the get, even stay-home moms are exhausted because
No, go ahead.
when I was working before I retired, I remember
Nicole's she's like 40, and I always thought she retired. She retired at like 39, 40. When I retired, anyway, go ahead. You were
yeah, I'm not 40. Would like to be 40.
but you were like 40 when you retired. But go ahead.
So I remember when the female lawyers would come back from maternity leave, and they would be like, I couldn't wait to get back to work because the demands of 24-hour child needing you at every second was so amazing that the stressful job of being a lawyer was easier.
Being a mom, really?
24
yes,
hours with their
I can-
kids. So they actually consider
Yes.
coming back to work a break. So let's be clear. Being a mommy is not an easy job, and doing it 24/7 really is not an easy job.
There's no days off.
Okay. Let me say this. I want to say this for these mummies out there. What I meant, and this is, context is so important. Okay. When I was a mom, I mean, I'm still a mom, but I have a 21-year-old and a 7-month-old. So when I was a mom the first time around, I felt like I was always working. Like I was in seminary, I was working, I was doing, ministry and stuff, and I was just always all over the place. And so my son was homeschooled, and he was a part of a homeschool network. Well, the moms they had husbands. I didn't have a husband. They had husbands. They were at home with their kids. They would bring their kids to play dates and sit there all day and be able to just hang out. And I'm like, oh y'all, I gotta get home and study, or I always had to get to the next thing. So I always say, y'all just some cute little mommies. That was like, I felt like, wow, like you guys get to just kick it with your kids. You can just chill out with your kids. I couldn't do that. Like I always had to, work and go to I had a meeting, I had a this, I had a that. And I felt like I didn't get a chance to really enjoy motherhood because I think there's an enjoyment that you can have with motherhood versus, the whole just trying to get things done. I got to take care of this child. And that's the mode I was in then. I was in the taking care of my child. And so I said mothers who were cute moms, where they're kind of like, well, I'm taking care of them, but I think it's a different rhythm to that. It's a different rhythm to the survival mode mom versus the just taking care mom. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it does. I was a stay-at-home mom for 2 different stints, so I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Just a different rhythm. So that's what I meant, ladies. No, like I'm not saying like when you're not crazy, that you're not crazy. It's just levels of the crazy and chaos that goes with being a mom. And I just felt like then I was on the edge. Now I'm normal crazy, right? I got a husband this time. So it makes a difference.
I think maybe what you're saying is actually a good segue to the meat of our topic, because I think you, from the outside looking in, right, you felt harried and stressed, but you're looking at them and they don't seem harried and stressed. So in your head, they've got it easier. And I think that segues nicely into our topic about I'm not your superwoman, because I think we as women, like I remember reading a study that said that moms lie to each other all the time. And they lie about the silliest things. They lie about how much time they're actually spending with their husbands. They lie about what they cook for dinner. Like they claim that they cook this well-balanced dinner when in fact they microwaved hot dogs. They lie about how much television their children watch, right? And in this article, it gave the idea of what's happening is, since all the moms are lying to each other, they're all comparing themselves against a false standard. So the mom who's microwaving the hot dogs is listening to that other mom talk about how she did a 3-course dinner for her kids. But that mom's lying. She did hot dogs too. So you're comparing yourself to this false standard. And I think the superwoman complex comes from, we only see the outside of people. We don't see the chaos within. We only know about the chaos within when it's our own chaos. And so since we're always comparing ourselves, we see this other woman who's juggling family, she's juggling this, or she's a single mom with 10 kids and her hair is always fly, or I have no kids and I can't get it together. So we're always doing this false comparison, which is driving us to try to be superwoman when y'all, superwoman don't exist.
Just no, she doesn't. And it highlights the fact that we're denying ourselves authentic community, because it's a shame that we can't admit that we're boiling hot dogs, that we didn't make that pot roast. Right. We really should be able to take the mask off and really do life together.
I think we could do life better
all week. Like we've been having hot dogs all week, right? Be able to say that, and that is for some reason for women. It is a lot of comparison, because I will say this: a lot of the women that were a part of our homeschool network, that they would say, "Wow, you're doing so much," and they wanted to always grab onto or be a part of something I was doing, because in their mind, your life is exciting. And I'm like, you see what I'm saying? So you're right, because I'm looking at them like, I wish I could just sit and be a wife and be at home and and with my baby. But they're looking at me like, oh, I wish I could be out there doing stuff, going, getting a seminary education, or or doing, like, they wished all these things. So you're right. We're constantly comparing. That is true. And that causes that discontentment and competition, which can lead to our exhaustion and our superwoman complex. And then the whole thing of just not being real. Like you're saying, not take off the mask. You know what? I'm not okay. This is not good. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that is something that when we can be authentic, when we can be real with people, like real, then that will take off the pressure of being the Superwoman, right? Forget that
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah. And I think the key word, the word that you were searching for there, and by the way, for the audience that looking at us, Dwayna Hall has popped in. Hi, Dwayna.
Hey,
It's
lady.
okay. Dwayne is a little early, but Dwayna, if you'd like to put on your camera, you could always join our discussion. We're talking about I'm Not Your Superwoman. So what I was saying is that I think the word you're looking for, Marzette, is vulnerability.
Mm.
And vulnerability is at the heart of the Superwoman complex, the lack thereof.
Mm. You're on mute, Nicole.
Vulnerability in I say what my weaknesses are. I want to throw my kids out a window, and it takes all my energy not to do that. To be able to speak that out loud, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, to show this veneer of perfection you see is not real. I'm struggling. And then that
Yes.
gives someone the ability to come alongside of you and say, me too.
Mm.
Yeah.
And me too is so empowering. In our relationships, a lot of times the reason people drain us, our kids, our husbands, our boyfriends, part of the reason that they drain us is because we refuse to show vulnerability. And so they think we're okay.
Mm. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't
I think
know
it's a good
that we
point.
need help because
Yeah.
we haven't shown them that we need help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So at the heart of the Superwoman complex is ripping that S off your chest means I rip off the S and I put on a V for vulnerability.
Mm.
Yes.
Yes.
And even like I'm turning 40 this year, and I've been reflecting on what kind of friend I want to be and what kind of friends do I really need at this stage in my life, because time looks different when you hit this stage in life. And I
Yeah.
thought back to when I had my first child, and I was so excited to be a new mom, and people wanted to come visit us, and everyone who came just wanted to sit there and hold the baby or sit there and stare at me as I'm sitting there sleepy. And one of my girlfriends, my best friend, stopped by, and she like washed all our dishes. She moved everything around. She vacuumed. Like, she did tangible, practical things that I needed so we could feel like we were taken care of. And then fast forward to this season in my life, one of my closest friends is fighting cancer. And I flew to California to take her to her chemo appointment. And we sat there together and we cried together and we talked and we prayed. And as I think of those two friendships, I'm like, Lord, as I turn 40 this year, those are the kinds of friends I want in my life. And that's the kind of friend I want to be. The one who can look at me when I don't have the eyebrows on or don't have the hair done and or don't have it all together and love me through it, love me at my worst, but also love me at my best. So we don't have to pretend I'm one or the other.
Yes. Amen. Yes.
Amen.
Amen. And so how do we get that? How do we, when you say you're praying for that, I wonder, is there a way that how can we be intentional about being that friend, but also having friends like that in our lives? Like, is there a way that we can be intentional, because that will help minister to the needs that we are covering up, playing Superwoman, right? Playing that, I have it together. Because for especially Black women, we are so strong, but really weak, right? All of us really, really have weaknesses. Not that we're weak, but we all have weaknesses. But we are so on the outside, we're so strong because we've had to be, right? We've had to be strong, and so we don't get to fall apart. We don't get to, especially when you're a mom, you don't get to fall apart. So how can I be intentional about having people in my life who I can be vulnerable with and I can just fall apart, and they're going to support me the right way, but also I can be that friend. How is there anything to say about that, Shirley?
So yes. So we left California when my oldest, who's now 10, he was 1. We moved to Atlanta, lived there for a year, moved to Chicago, lived there for 7. So and now we're here in Little Rock, been here for 2 years. And each time I've had to start over. Like you keep your friends, from where you've moved from, but you got to build new friendships where you are. And I literally interviewed them. I said, look, this is what I'm looking for in a friend. I need authenticity. I need to keep it real. I don't have time to talk for the gossip. I'm not interested in reality shows. Like, I just kind of put it all on the table. Like, okay, can we be that kind of friend? If not, we can be acquaintances and it's all good. I'll love you anyway. But if we can be this kind of friend, I'm going to dedicate more of my time to this relationship. And I've been very, very direct. And I think it's helped me build good friendships quicker than it did in the past, because I made it clear from the get-go, this is what I'm here for. And if we can't give each other that, then let's just be cordial.
Yeah. That I think that's an excellent suggestion.
That's bold.
That is bold. But I think her point is too, once you get past a certain age, you don't have time for nonsense. And I think going back to this issue of vulnerability is the key for attracting the help you need, right? When you are not vulnerable, you will not attract the friends you need. You will not attract anything. And Sheridan, I think a lot of times we think of vulnerability as weakness, but what Sheridan just did, which was this is who I am, and this is what I want. That is a form of vulnerability, because you've opened yourself up for the person to think you're weird, to think you're demanding, to reject you. You have opened yourself up to rejection. And there's always that risk when you put yourself out there. But guess what? The payoff is that you can get what you want. So many of us are so terrified of risking rejection if we show our true selves that we're always hiding ourselves, and we get rejection in doses. So you know what I mean? So
instead can also be exhausting.
Yeah. Instead of getting exhausting rejection because we're scared to show ourselves, we hide, and then we keep getting little rejections when you might as well rip that Band-Aid off fast. Here, this is who I am. This is what I need. You don't like it, next.
Yeah,
there you go. Deuces.
And that what you said, Sharon, reminded me of some years ago. One of my friends, we were like, you know what? We need friends who we don't have to talk to every day because we're busy. So I don't have to talk to you every day. But when we do talk, it may be a month. But whenever we do talk, it's like we never stop talking. And also, you're not tripping. Like, you're not like, oh, well, I called you 2 weeks ago, or I texted you and you didn't respond. Like, I need friends that are going to be like, you know what? I know she's not ignoring me. She's just busy and not going to get in her feelings behind it, not going to be offended. So we were saying that's the kind of friends we need because of our lifestyles. And just because probably we're just kind of forgetful or whatever it is. But I will say that I needed friends that, we were saying that to each other jokingly, but we realized that's the kind of friends we are, where, I may not talk to you, but that doesn't mean anything. I may not answer you right away, but that doesn't mean, so, and you're not going to be upset. Whereas I've had friends who, if I don't respond, they're like, oh, well, what's wrong? It becomes a big deal. And that's stressful. And then so what happens is that we try to be Superwomen and make sure we get back to everybody all the time. And in doing that can be exhausting. That can steal from the effectiveness of your family life, your personal life, your ministry, because you're trying to keep friends happy, right? So, you're trying to keep people happy around you. And what I've learned is that if somebody wants to be your friend, they're going to be your friend almost no matter what you do.
And if 3 months go by and you haven't talked, you're going to pick up right where you left off, like no time was lost.
Yeah. And nobody's tripping.
Yes.
So that was a very good point. Before we go, our time is running out. Actually, it's been out, but I want to ask you one question, Sheridan.
That's it. Before you move on, because I think you just made one really good point, and I don't want it to drop. You said trying to keep your friends happy is part of the Superwoman complex. I would say no. Trying to keep your friends, trying to keep your husband, trying to keep your kids, trying to keep your boss.
Everybody happy.
People happy is the Superwoman complex. Go on. I just had to point that out, because it was such a good point you
That's
made.
right.
That is true. And I think that's important to stop there. Yes, keeping everybody happy, even our parents. You know what I mean? Just even as adults, I know for me, I want to see my mom all the time, right? And she'll say, "Come watch a movie with me today," and I'm like, I want to, but you know what I mean? So all those, so you're stretched. So yeah, you're right, Nicole. And so what do we do with that? Sheridan, I want to direct that question to you. Like, in trying to keep, as a Superwoman, with the Superwoman complex, we're always in this mode of keeping people happy, right? And trying to do everything, trying to keep a certain image, right? We want to make sure we're we have an image of power or of security, even of beauty, right? We want to make sure in the midst of all the chaos, I still got to look a certain way. I still got to be physically presentable. All that is pressure. It's pressure. So what would you say is the one thing that can help us be centered and remain centered and peaceful? What advice you got?
The word that comes to mind is prioritize. You have to prioritize, and you've got to communicate to your friends what your priorities are. First and foremost is God. That's the first priority in everything, your relationship with God. And so making sure,
what is that?
So making sure that you're carving out that time. Like, I know I work in healthcare. And so when the world was slowing down, we sped up because we had to provide services. And so we were working crazy shifts and still trying to run our households and keep, all the balls in the air. And I had to adjust my time and make sure I got up an hour earlier so I could spend time in God's presence. Or if the day didn't have enough hours in it, I would listen to scripture, like listen to my Bible app play while I washed dishes or cooked breakfast, because I had to make sure I was getting that time in. And so first and foremost, you have to prioritize and make sure God is first in everything. And then make sure your friends, if they're real friends, that they understand what your priorities are. It's God, it's your marriage, it's your family. Friends are not at the top of the list. We love them, they're like family to us, but we got to make sure our household is taken care of. And so prioritize is the first thing that comes to mind. And if you're not prioritizing your relationship with God, if you're not spending time in his presence, you are not going to be empowered by the Holy Spirit to do the things that God has called you to do. You can't be a good mom, a good wife, a good friend, a good sister, a good employee if you're not plugged into the source and making sure you're grounded in who you are, remembering that God is sovereign, asking him for his wisdom to face all the stuff that's going to come at you during the day. There are times I have to pray and ask God to help me love my kids well, because virtual school, when I tell you, it's rough in these virtual streets. And so I have to pray that intentionally, like, Lord, help me to love my kids well, to be patient, to respond well, and to not discourage them as they're trying to learn and figure it out while I'm trying to get my work done for work. So prioritize. That's the short answer to your question.
Prioritize. Amen. Yeah.
Prioritize.
Well, with that in mind, and communicate. Yeah, prioritize and communicate, right? To our friends, in our people in our sphere of influence that want our time. Communicate. Yeah, good. Thank you for that. And so as we close, I'm going to leave you with this scripture. In Mark chapter 11, at verse 28, Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." So if your life is crazy like ours, things are all over the place, and you're like, "Oh God, I'm not a superwoman," right? Well, we just want to encourage you, as Sheridan said, put God first, right? And just go to Jesus and just say, "Lord, help me. I need your rest in my mind. I need your rest in my heart, in my life, Lord. Just help me." And he says, he promises that he'll give you rest. So we love you, and we want to thank you for joining us for Real Talk for Women of Faith today. Real Talk is brought to you by Inner City Women of Faith. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And Sheridan, thank you again for joining us. And thank all of you out there. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.